Welcome to this presentation on suicide and suicidality. Our aim today would be to promote understanding, support, and prevention. What is suicide? Suicide is the act of intentionally causing your own death. Every suicide is a tragedy that affects families, communities, and has long-lasting effects on the people who are left behind. Suicide is often and easily misunderstood. Here are some useful terms to know when speaking about suicidality and suicide prevention. What is a suicide attempt? It's an attempt at taking your own life. However, it results in your survival. Suicidal thoughts consists of thinking about or considering suicide, or planning a suicide attempt. The range of suicidal thoughts may vary from fleeting thoughts to extensive thoughts to detailed planning. Suicidal behavior is any action that could cause a person to die, such as an overdose or crashing a car on purpose. Is self-harm then the same as suicidal behavior? Acts of self-harm, such as cutting or burning yourself, are not usually suicide attempts. Most people who self-harm are not at high risk for suicide. Did you know that suicide is common? The World Health Organization found that close to 800,000 people die because of suicide every year. That's one person every 40 seconds. And it's estimated 1 out of every 9 people will have considered suicide at some point in their lives. Suicide may occur throughout the lifespan. In South Africa, the fastest growing age is young people under the age of 35. Specifically also female suicides, which peaks between the ages of 15 and 19 years. Suicide and suicidal behavior is strongly associated with several common mental illnesses, such as major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, substance use disorders, schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress disorder, and personality disorders. You do, however, not need to have a mental illness to think about suicide or even attempt suicide. Having thoughts about suicide does not mean that a person is going crazy or is weak. Often the person considering suicide shows good judgment and insight and has a firm grasp on reality. So how does one get to the point of considering suicide? Suicidal thoughts can result when we experience too much pain without having enough resources to cope. There are times in life where we might feel totally hopeless, helpless, and overwhelmed with emotional pain. Our problems may seem unfixable. The pain feels like it will never end. We may believe we've run out of options and suicide seems to be the only viable choice. When suicidal thoughts come to mind, we might have mixed feelings about them. Suicidal thoughts can be frightening and confusing. People tend to avoid talking about them, so we don't realize how common they are. For some, the idea of suicide may be a way of getting back at others or showing others the extent of their pain. But after completing suicide, you won't be there to see that others feel guilty or finally understand your pain. Thinking about suicide does not mean that you will end up taking your life. Sometimes the thought of ceasing to exist can be comforting in the face of great suffering. Suicidal thoughts are a sign to change something in your life, not a sign to end your life. A mental health care professional can help you by assisting you in reducing your pain, which you may feel both emotionally and physically, and by helping you to increase your coping resources. Let's look at some of the factors that increase the risk of suicide. A prior suicide attempt is the single most important risk factor for completed suicide in the general population. There is a higher incidence of suicide in the family members of a person who has completed suicide. Recent life stresses, including deaths in the family or of friends, the loss of a job, the loss of prior abilities, and other drastic life changes may contribute to the risk. A sense of hopelessness, feeling trapped and powerless, along with social isolation, may contribute. So does the use of maladaptive or costly coping skills. The experience of poverty and the experience of physical health problems may also contribute to the risk. In addition, the experience of adverse childhood events such as sexual, physical, or emotional abuse and trauma may contribute. Vulnerable groups who experience discrimination are also at a heightened risk, including people who experience sexual identity issues. Along with this, the experience of legal or disciplinary problems may also heighten the risk. Stigma, particularly surrounding mental disorders and suicide, means many people thinking of taking their own life or who have attempted suicide are not seeking help and are therefore not getting the help that they need. It's generally believed that many suicides happen impulsively in moments of crisis, with a breakdown of the ability to deal with life stresses such as financial problems, relationship breakups, or chronic pain and illness. However, the majority of suicides are preceded by warning signs, and it's important to be aware of what those signs are. Some people may talk openly about the fact that they're considering suicide if they were asked. Others are more likely to keep it to themselves. These are signs which may act as red flags when displayed by someone you know. Some of these signs can be classified as non-verbal indicators. This would include social withdrawal or avoiding spending time with others, persistent and drastic changes in mood, including depression, anger, and intense fear. A disinterest in maintaining personal hygiene or appearance, uncharacteristically reckless behavior, diet and rapid weight changes, distractibility, sleep disturbance, alcohol and drug abuse, the person giving away their possessions and putting their affairs in order, such as creating a will, and particularly when a person suddenly appears calm and collected after a long period of immense emotional and mental struggle. Other indicators may be expressed verbally or more directly, such as a sense of hopelessness, failing to see a future for him or herself, a belief in the self as a burden to others. You might hear the person saying that others will be better off without him or her, saying that they feel worthless or alone, talking about wanting to die, expressing a sense of being trapped or stuck, or the belief that they have perpetrated an unforgivable act. You may ask, how do I support someone in this position? It can be frightening when someone you care about shows suicidal signs or symptoms. If you're worried about the person, it's important to talk to them about suicide. Talking to them will not give them ideas or encourage them to follow through. You can begin the conversation by asking questions in a non-judgmental and non-confrontational way. It helps to ask direct questions. For example, are you thinking about suicide? During the conversation, make sure you stay calm and speak in a reassuring tone. Often the person feels relieved to be asked and to be given the opportunity to confide in someone. Talking honestly about suicide is a good way to find out if someone needs help and what kind of help that might be. Talking about suicide lowers the risk of suicide. You may ask yourself, but how will I know what to do? You can start by asking the person if they're planning to end their life and if they have a plan. If they're considering suicide and have a plan, the person can be regarded as being in crisis. It's best to call an ambulance and not leave the person alone until the ambulance arrives. If the person does not have a clear plan to end their life, they still need extra support. If the person is not in crisis, you can help by listening. Listening intently shows the other person that they are not alone. You do not have to say much at all. Take the person seriously. They are in pain and need your help. Show the person that you are a good person to talk to. So this is not the time for judgment or for making jokes. Trust is crucial. Try not to make promises that you cannot keep. Show that you understand that the person has a serious problem. It's not helpful to say things like pull yourself together or cheer up. Make sure not to minimize their problems or attempts to shame them into changing their mind. It might help to say things like, I don't want you to die, you're really important to me, or it makes sense that you feel this way, but I think we can try to find other solutions. So expressing genuine concern is very important. Listening and showing your support is the best way to help. You may think to yourself, but I'm not a trained counsellor. Well, you're not expected to be a psychologist or a counsellor. Rather, you may play a role in connecting the person who is suffering with support. Offer to help them to find a healthcare provider, or make a phone call for them, or go with them to their first appointment. Tell the person that is suffering that help is available and that they can feel better with the right kind of support. There are two major safeguards or protective factors when it comes to suicide and its prevention. One is building strong and meaningful connections with other people. This may include spending time with family and friends, attending cultural and religious events, and getting involved with your community. Importantly, help others. For example, through volunteering or doing chores for others, the elderly, etc. Research indicates that it is not only feeling connected with others that is the preventative factor, but that one feels like you are contributing in a meaningful way. Secondly, get help early for any emotional or mental difficulties that you may be experiencing. Suicidal thoughts and behaviors feature strongly with certain common mental health problems. You can protect yourself by reaching out earlier rather than later. Here we list some warning signs that you may be experiencing mental or emotional distress that needs clinical attention. Feeling like nothing makes you happy anymore, like there is no enjoyment in life. Feeling sad and hopeless for a long time without any relief. Feeling overwhelmed and that you cannot cope with what's happening in your life. Feeling intensely scared or anxious for a long time. Noticing unusual or strange or frightening thoughts and experiences that do not go away. Some people, for example, may hear voices telling them what to do. Sleeping less or more than usual. Eating less or more than usual. Using alcohol or other drugs more frequently and to a greater degree, despite bad consequences. Being unable to meet your obligations or attend to your responsibilities. Withdrawing from family and friends. Here are some suggestions about additional ways to protect yourself. Keep your home or environment safe by getting rid of ways to hurt yourself such as harboring pills, razors, or firearms. Develop a safety plan to aid you in a time of crisis with a trusted friend, family member, or a health professional. Identify high-risk triggers or situations and work to avoid these. Focus on basic self-care. This would include eating a balanced diet, getting some exercise, getting enough rest, decreasing or stopping using substances, as these can worsen depression and suicidal thoughts. Look at building structure and routine into your life. This may include having regular wake-up times and regular bedtimes, planning your day and activities, and continuing to attend class. Often this entails doing the opposite of what you might feel like doing. Think about what you enjoy or what you enjoyed doing in the past. Try and build those things into your life on a regular basis. Think of personal goals and try and create them. If you need help right now, please contact one of the numbers listed below. For assistance, assessment, and counseling during office hours, please contact the Student Counseling Division on your campus or email student-counseling@cput.ac.za. In an emergency or crisis, you can also go to your nearest emergency room at any general medical hospital. Thank you for attending this presentation.